This meeting to order at 10 a.m. We will start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I will ask Commissioner Jan Fight Miller to lead us in the U.S. Pledge and Commissioner Ben Pena in the Texas.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation of God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you. Let's start. I would entertain a motion for an excused absence for Commissioner Wilkinson, who's dealing with some family health issues.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Miller, second by Commissioner Woodruff. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? Motion carries. Agenda item number 3, remarks from the chair. First of all, thank everybody for being here. I know we have some guests that came to watch the commission meeting today. I want to thank staff for everything they've done to prepare this meeting. I will warn everybody, we're going with laptops and tablets today and not the printed version. We do have our blankie with us if we need it, so please bear with us as we try to go to the paperless route. It's been a busy quarter since the last time we met. We've had Unauthorized Practice of Law group meet, Broker Responsibility Working Group meet, Broker Responsibility Course Writing Group meet. Everybody's been really busy. And I would really challenge not only the commissioners but the staff, if there's an issue or an item that you think needs to be addressed, we put that task force together for the Unauthorized Practice of Law, and they met probably 4 times over the last probably 3 or 4 months, and they came up with a really, I think, a solid proposal to take to broker lawyer. Broker lawyer looked at it last week. It's in your minutes for adoption, kind of cleaning up some language in paragraph 11. So if there's something like that, you know, this commission is flexible enough to where we can certainly take one of those and get it to a working group, a task force, whatever you want to call it, and get it done. I will tell you, we're out of COVID. We've been invited to speak at several associations, Corpus, South Padre. We've done some in the Dallas area, and so it's been really good to get out and see the members and see the licensees and really get a face to the face, not a face to the screen. So we've been really busy on that. I also want to thank staff for taking the time. As a commissioner, there's times where we want a little bit more information on something, and the staff is always just, I mean, Johnny on the spot getting in information and stuff. And as a commissioner, I need to realize, you know, I've got to be careful because I don't want to hound or the staff or stalk them or whatever, but there's so many times where we need more information and they get it to us. And I just want to thank staff for that, because we don't always realize everything you do behind the scenes to make this agency work as efficiently as it does. And I know I speak for all the commissioners, when we do have an issue like that, you're just really prompt in getting that. So I want to thank you for that. Okay, we need to go agenda item number 4. We need appointments of a selection committee to review applicants for ESAC, and we need 2 education members and 4 license holders. And I've been asked, Commissioner Wilkinson currently sits on ESAC. Commissioner Russell also sits on ESAC. I know they would like to be part of this selection committee. I would for sure certainly like a member of the public to be on this selection committee for ESAC, and possibly one more commissioner. We normally have 3 or 4? 3, okay. So if we can have those 2 commissioners that sit on ESAC, and my reasoning for that is they see who's engaged, they see who's involved, and so I would like those 2 commissioners and maybe a public member. If not, we'll...
I will raise my hand.
Okay, Commissioner Williams. Okay, very good. Yes. No, we're 3. We're good. Okay. Can I have a motion to appoint Wilkinson, Russell, and Commissioner Williams to the selection committee for ESAC, Education Standards Advisory Committee? Hold on, I've got something Okay, all right, then we will appoint. Okay. Also need one for the Inspectors Committee, and I sit on the Inspectors Committee, and we need to appoint one public member to it. I would certainly entertain another commissioner helping me with the inspector selection process.
I'll do that.
Okay, Commissioner Miller, and a public member,
Mr. Chairman, I'll be happy to do that.
and Commissioner Pena. So we'll have myself, Commissioner Miller, and Commissioner Pena to help the Inspector Committee. All right. By the way, if there's any public members that would like to speak, you will need to sign up in the back. They'll bring it to me, and when we get to that agenda item, we'll certainly bring you up. Okay, we're going to start reports. We're kind of going to go out of order as the chairman's prerogative, and I'm going to ask if Scott Regan will go ahead and give the Inspector Committee report, since he is an individual that's licensed as an inspector or volunteer. I'm going to move them in front of the staff. That way they can get their report and he can go back inspecting houses and making a living.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I am Scott Regan. I'm the vice chair of the committee. We've had 2 meetings so far, one in July and one in January. We have 2 committees, the education and the SOPs. We're working on different projects that we're going to be presenting for next meeting. Our next meeting is in October 18th. Pretty much that's what we're at right now. Any questions?
Any questions? All right. Thank you very much. And let me add, there was an agenda item that was removed that he will talk about the next time. Okay. Now let's go back to agenda item number 6, and we will start with Executive Director Chelsea Buckholtz.
Good morning. Is the mic on? I think so. Well, welcome back to Austin. It's good to see all of you. I have a few updates I wanted to give for you, and then just a few warnings of what's to come later in the agenda. Just as you have established selection committees for both ESAC and the Inspector Committee, I wanted you to know that we changed the process to receive those applications just a little bit, and that has been very successful. We started utilizing SurveyMonkey to receive these applications that ask questions of each applicant. And the first question we utilize to determine whether or not they're qualified, because there are certain qualifications that these applicants must meet. Are they a license holder? Are they a provider? Things like this. So that has cut down on the administration of the process significantly, which is extremely helpful. We've also improved our communication efforts, and you'll see that in the numbers we received. For ESAC, we received 93 responses compared to 59 last year. And for inspectors, we received 144 responses compared to 48 last year. So I see that as a good sign that people know about it and that they're responding. So that's good news. Kudos to Summer Mandel on just getting the word out. Later in today's agenda, you will consider for approval the updated course material for the broker responsibility course. You will notice that this course looks different than it has in the past, and I'm really proud of the work of the committee to make these updates. We've embraced this concept of we regulate minimum standards, but we teach best practices, which I think is a little bit of a shift from some of our previous practices. We wanted there to be room for discussion within the course and for some application, and I think that we've really accomplished that with these materials. You know, broker responsibility is a topic that comes up in so many forms, in questions that we receive through our contact center, through our disciplinary process, through informal conversations with license holders saying, you know, we really need to up the professionalism, and that comes down to broker responsibility. So this is an important course. One section that I'm really excited about is this one rule fits all, which is the broker responsibility rule, and it fits all types of brokerages. So we've addressed that within the course materials to say, If you're a huge broker, if you're a small broker, if you want to be a hands-off broker, if you want to be in the day-to-day management, whatever kind of broker you are, here's what you're responsible for. I think this will be really good. I have to thank, and we might do this a couple of times today, but I have to thank those who worked on the materials: Chance Brown, Carrie Lewis, Avis Wukash, Byron Underwood, and Charles Porter. They worked with our staff of Jennifer Gruby, Jennifer Wheeler, Vanessa Burgess, Summer Mandel, and Michael Malloy. So thank you to each of these folks for their contribution on this really monumental effort. Later today, you will also hear more about our progress towards our vendor selection and contracting for our regulatory applications modernization project. That's what we're calling RAMP. It's our database and kind of back-end system that will really help us modernize the way we do things in all of our divisions. So we're currently in that negotiation process. We'll talk more about that both in executive session and then later in the agenda, but I'm very proud of the hard work that's gotten us to this point. It's a long time coming, and the work is just beginning. You'll also have the budget for 2023 before you today. I consider this one mechanism of kind of my marching orders, how we spend our money. And I wanted to remind you that within our budget policies, there is a provision that requires us to receive approval for any variance over 10% or $20,000. And so that acts as our bumpers for how we spend money. So I want you to just be reminded of that as we look at the budget for 2023. You'll see, and we've talked a little bit about the 5% request for merit increases. I've added another 5% to adjust for inflation. I'm really excited that we have the funding available to take care of our staff, who are the backbone of what we do. Travel. I have long said that one of the gifts of COVID for me is that I was able to spend really my first 2 years in this job looking internally, to spend time with our staff, to examine our operations and how we're structured. And I think that was a gift to me personally, and I think it was really helpful in how I've led. I am also extremely grateful that we seem to be in a transition, and that what was likely expected of me at the beginning is now available, which is to travel and meet license holders and to get out there and hear from people. I was in San Antonio a few weeks ago. The chair and I have been at several events. We've been invited to Texas Realtors conferences, and I will go to South Padre Island just for the day later this month, and then Brownwood the following month, and expect there to be a few more opportunities to get out there. I'm basically saying yes to everything that, to every invitation. We do require them to pay for our travel, and so sometimes they say, oh gosh, never mind. It's expensive to get to McAllen. But we'll figure out a way to do those types of things. Lastly, we have a new HR director that is starting today. Pam Pennington comes to us from the Animal Health Commission, where she's been for the last 13 years and risen through the ranks there, lastly, as HR director. I'm really excited for her enthusiasm in the way I am certain that she will support our agency, establishing systems and processes that we need as we grow, and to be really a voice of that internal customer service for the agency. So I know she'll make our lives easier, and I'm excited to have her on board. She's in the middle of onboarding and meeting the HR staff, so she's not sitting back here. I let her off the hook, but I look forward to you meeting her. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions, and I'll be there with the mic if you need me throughout the meeting.
Commissioner Lerner.
For all these people, or for however many it is, that are asking you to go meet with them and the expenses are too much, are you giving them an online option?
Always. We always give an online option. And, you know, I was thinking about it this morning because I heard from one local board who said, you know, no, I don't think we're going to do that this time. We'll look for ways to do that. Maybe we have a specific item in the budget for next year that is just, that allows boards to apply to use those funds, something like that, because I want us to be extremely accessible. But yes, an online option is always there.
Any other questions? All right, thank you very much. Next up will be Tony Slagle, Deputy Executive Director. Good morning, Tony.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, Commissioners.
Numbers.
What's that?
Good numbers.
Oh, thank you. Yes, Tony Slagle, Deputy Executive Director. Before I get into the highlighted items I want to talk about in terms of the customer service issues, I did want to just say that, remind everybody that the legislative session is 5 months away. We're working towards that. It's actually early filing is in November, so it's a little earlier than that. And staff will be providing all of you an update tomorrow on our legislative initiatives. So look forward to that. All right, so Robert Hood will be up here in a moment to give you an update on his division's performance. Since his reports focus on the numbers up to June, I'm going to highlight some of the items that I spoke to in my July report that I sent out last week. As I mentioned, there were some challenges in July, both technical and staff-wise. DIR had an issue with the phone systems for all of the agencies in the Capitol complex, and it shut the phones down. We couldn't access calls. That happened on Friday, July 8th, and as a result, prior to us realizing that this wasn't going to get resolved, we had a hold time of over 6 minutes. We shut the phones down for that day. We did put a message on the phone and on the website letting people know it was an issue, and we were trying to resolve that. But that carried over into the following Monday, which is also typically the busiest day of the week anyway. But because of the lack of access on that Friday, that Monday was also a high hold time. We had a hold time on that Monday of just over 4 minutes. We also experienced a staffing issue because there was some unexpected sicknesses that week that had staff numbers lower. But regardless of all of that, we were still able to maintain a 1 minute and 15-second hold time for the month of July. So kudos to Robert and his staff for that. Also, they have answered for the is it the sixth or the 7th month? 6 months in a row, I believe. No, 6 of the last 7 months. They've answered all emails, 100% of emails in one business day. So that's becoming the new norm for that staff, which is really great. Staffing-wise, there were an average of 19 people on the phones for July. Robert has hired 5 additional staff members that are currently in training. Once they're up and running, there will be 24 people on the phone, so those numbers hopefully will just continue to get better and better and better. So just to give you an update on the first month in August, we had a hold time of 1 minute and 5 seconds with an abandon rate of 1.8%, and that was on a little over 3,600 calls for that week. Any questions on that before I get to my final item?
None.
All right, thank you. I just wanted to mention that on a licensing side of things, beginning in September, licensing is scheduled to begin work with IT to test the ERW education requirements on initial and renewal ERW applications. This schedule allows enough time to conduct thorough testing of the various applicant scenarios and to correct issues and bugs ahead of the January 1st deadline when those things will go into place. Jennifer Wheeler will be up here to provide you an update on the ERW course approval process during her report, but I just wanted to give you an update on where licensing stands on that. All right, that's it for me unless there are any questions.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next up, Robert Hood, Director of Customer Relations Division. Good morning, Robert.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. Robert Hood, Director of Customer Relations Division. I'll be pleased to report to you this morning on our statistics from June of 2022. On page 15 in your report, page 15 in your meeting materials, you will find the Customer Relations Division report. This report will reflect contact center statistics through June 2022. In June, all metrics for the division trended in a very positive direction. The call volume for June was a little bit over 17,000 calls, and that was a 7% increase than the previous month of May. The hold time for June was 1 minute and 21 seconds, compared to the 1 minute and 46 seconds in May. Staff members we had about 20 staff members answering phones in June, And as you're aware, we do anticipate some days where there's going to be what we call outlier days, where the hold time is going to be over 2-minute hold time. There were 3 days in the month of June, 3 days out of the 22 working days that we were over the 2-minute target. 2 of those days were within the first week of the month when we were coming back from a holiday, and another was on a Monday, and then another day was when we ran our routine expired program. June comparison of calls between TREC and TALCB, still 90% of our calls and emails were TREC related. We're doing more and more in the contact center to mitigate those outlier days where we're over the 2-minute mark. As of August, we are staffed at 24, August 1st, we're staffed at 24 representatives on the phones. This is more staff that we've had in the contact center ever. At least in my last 4 years here, more staff than we've ever had. In addition, we are adding some messages to our phone menu to urge people to email us. That way, our email response time has been great over the last couple months. So if they have a general question they can ask us, they can just email us instead of waiting on hold. So hopefully that'll mitigate the number of outlier days we have. On page 16 in your report, this is a 12-month overview of the calls presented to the contact center and the hold times for the respective months. Over the past 5 months, the contact center has been consistently below our 2-minute target hold time, with as little as a 35-second hold time and as long as a 1-minute and 49-second hold time. The number of calls presented over these past few months range between 15,000 and 18,000 calls per month. Next, on page 17, you will find the number of emails the contact center has handled. In June 2022, we handled 3,889 emails, and all were processed within 1 business day. On page 18 in your reports is our fiscal year comparison of the monthly average of calls we were presented each fiscal year with the average hold time. For this fiscal year, we're averaging about 16,000 calls per month, and our average hold time each month is 1 minute and 15 seconds. 1 minute and 45 seconds. On page 19 in your report, you will find the results of the customer satisfaction survey. Most of our customers that choose to complete the survey are contacting us via telephone, and they are more than likely a real estate sales agent. 98% of the customers surveyed rated their telephone experience as above average or excellent. This will conclude the report for the Customer Relations Division. I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Yeah, on the email rating, 77% satisfactory. Are they listing the ones that listed it unsatisfactory or less than excellent or whatever? Are they listing why?
Yes, some of those are listing why, and majority of those, I guess, complaints are complaining not so much about the service, but of just the answer they received is not to their liking. And then the number of responses that, it's 28 responses total for email rating. So I think it's probably about 1 or 2 that were rated us as poor.
No, I have one question. Your numbers are really, really good, but do you have a standard in which you guys want to go by? And if you do, is there any way you can even improve on your numbers?
Of course, our standard will be, for someone to call us and then we answer the phone right away. But we put in the 2-minute target just to kind of gauge where we are staffing-wise. We have different indicators, like at a 30-second hold time, a 1-minute hold time, where we adjust our staff just to make sure that we're staffed accordingly. But the 2-minute mark is our goal.
So you believe your hold time is really dictated by the number of staff?
It helps, yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the number of people that call in. The majority of our inflation and hold time comes during our lunch times. I don't know if, sales agents are taking their lunch and they're calling us during our lunch time. So we're, during that time, we have to have a lunch as well. So some of our staff we don't have as many staff on the phone during that time. So that's when our whole time kind of inflates. So we're trying to project or kind of forecast our call volume to readjust our lunches and be able to have more people on the phones during that time.
Okay. I think you answered the question.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
Commissioner Miller.
What is it, your Director Hood? Robert?
Robert, yes, ma'am.
You have just created a miracle, and when Mike and I got here to the commission, the whole time was 23 minutes.
Oh, yeah.
And you had agents screaming all over the state of Texas about how awful it was to call TREC and sit on hold, and they just wouldn't do it. And man, you've made a wonderful change, so thank you.
Thank you. Thank you to my staff.
I'll add to that. I mean, you were just over a minute 40 last month. You had 19. You've got a full staff of 24. So congratulations on that. I know agents are just horrible calling on the first and second when their license is expiring and then calling when the renewals go out. And so I know you get bulks of volume. And we certainly encourage them when we speak to call at different hours than lunch. I'm amazed at the 1.8% drop call. That is phenomenal. They say 4% is just getting in the elevator or whatever.
Yes.
There's probably some cell companies that would like that number.
Yes.
So congratulations on that. And I did notice, even though the emails are going up, the call volume is still pretty much the same. And that's probably with the number of licensees we're supervising. But yeah, I think the calls, the emails, the website redesign, I think all three of them are really working good together. I will add, as a commissioner, I don't know if I want y'all to answer the phone immediately, because that might mean we're overstaffed. Yes. So maybe there's got to be a happy medium there. But I think great numbers, so thank you. And thank your staff for providing these numbers. You need anything else? Commissioner Woodruff?
No, I was just going to say, back to 3 or 4 years ago, it was absolutely horrendous in the field,
Yeah.
And it's like, oh God, who knows when we'll hear back or if we can get hold of them. So the change has been, it used to be something we talked about almost every day, and now we don't, which means you guys are doing a great job, and I appreciate it.
Great. Thank you. Thank you so much.
All right. Very good. Jennifer Wheeler, Director of Education and Examination Services. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, Chair Kessner and Commissioners. Jennifer Wheeler, Director of Education and Exams. Before I get to reports, as Tony mentioned, I have a couple of updates for you. As you know, we are preparing to launch the new ERW education program. In doing so, we have completed the development of the corresponding provider forms that they'll use to submit the course applications to us, as well as the course approval form for the qualifying course that contains all the required content. Those forms will be posted to the website this week. This will allow ample time for providers to develop and submit their courses to us. We're gonna begin accepting those course applications on September 1st. So that way they can get them into us. We're ready to launch for the January 1st start date. We'll already have courses approved, ready for the ERW agents to complete. In support of the new program, we have also made updates to our education posting system. So we've already tested and vetted that. Providers of ERW education will be able to post directly into the posting system, just like our CE providers do right now, as well as our qualifying providers of the pre-licensing and SAE coursework. So we've got all the back-end work, and that's why, like Tony said, now the ball is pushed over to Denise's team, so they're gonna do their testing and vetting, and we're really pleased to be pretty ahead of the game for this change. Are there any questions about that before I move on to reports? Okay. So at the last commission meeting, I presented some new education reports, and I was really grateful for all the feedback that I received from you all. and we have incorporated your suggestions. Going forward, the education reports will include the older reports that you were used to seeing, as well as the newer reports. So the first report before you is the fiscal year-to-date data for qualifying education, providers and courses received and approved through June 2022. This report and the next one are the ones that you have been used to seeing at the commission meetings quarterly. So similarly, the next report is the same fiscal year-to-date data as it relates to the continuing education program. Are there any questions on these two reports? Okay. We'll move on. So to date, we have approved over 200 CE provider applications, with about half of that volume being renewal apps and the other half being new CE provider apps. So that's about a little over 100 new CE providers that we've approved. So the report before you now is a 5-year look back at the 4 primary applications that we process in education. In blue, you see the qualifying education providers. In gray, the continuing education providers. In orange, the qualifying courses, and in yellow, the CE courses. And so you can see that our most voluminous application type that we receive is the CE course applications. And I expect that we'll see a slight increase here as we begin to review and approve ERW CE course applications. I don't expect the same kind of impact for the qualifying courses because, again, you know, we did some research. We sent a survey out to our education providers asking who was planning on submitting applications for the ERW program, and we have probably about 6 providers that plan to submit the qualifying courses, and then a number of others that plan to submit the CE courses. So I think we'll see a bigger impact on the CE as opposed to qualifying. Okay, moving on to the next report. This report is a 13-month comparison of all approved applications going back to June 2021. Our peak months appear to be December, February, March, and June. In my opinion, the lighter numbers during the first 6 months of the report were lower, likely because COVID was still a little more significant at that time. We seem to be moving away from that. We're continuing to monitor reports like this, and they will hopefully help us identify trends and manage expectations for our team. And if there are no questions, I'll move on to the last report. This is a much more broad-based report and reflects a year-over-year comparison of all applications combined, going back 5 years and including fiscal year-to-date information for 2022. As a reminder, FY 2019 includes the first 8 months of the COVID onset. We were hit with an influx of Zoom courses at that time, which I believe accounts for the spike that year. Outside of that, our overall numbers seem to remain pretty consistent. We've got 2 more months of data to collect before we can close out 2022, and I'll present that information to you at the November meeting. This concludes my report, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Commissioner Miller.
I just had the thought as you were talking, are the Zoom classes going to continue with no exam?
Yes. Yes.
That we have to report?
Right, right. That we consider those classroom courses, they're live in person, you know, in real time interaction, and so those will not need an exam.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Anything else?
Other questions? All right.
Okay,
Thank you very much. Next up, Denise Sample, Director of Licensing.
Good morning, Chair Kestner and Commissioners. If you point your attention to page 25 of your materials, we start out the licensing reports through June of 2020 with applications received. So in the top right corner, you'll see broker and sales agent applications broken out by broker business entity, broker individual, and sales agent. And this overall in the real estate applications represents about an 8% decrease compared to the number of applications we received the same time last year. We'll continue monitoring that each month as we go and like Jennifer Wheeler just said, in November we'll have full fiscal year information to present. The bottom left corner is the inspector year-to-date applications received. And so, if you see a disparity there, I want to remind you that the inspector application requirements changed in June of 2021. And so we received a record number of applications ahead of that deadline. So when we compare this current fiscal year-to-date inspector applications to 2020, at the same time 2020, we are actually up by 156 professional inspector applications, 2 real estate inspector applications, and 31 apprentice inspector applications. So when we compare to a normal year, so 2020, then we're ahead. We'll continue monitoring that though, but wanted to point out that 2021 was a strange year for us for inspector applications. And then the bottom right hand of this page shows the ERW application numbers. And so we're continuing to monitor those ahead of the ERW application, ahead of the new education requirements that take effect in January. As with any other license type, when application requirements are going to change, we see a large influx of applications that come in ahead of that change. So, to remind you, right now there are no education requirements at all for an ERW initial license application. And so we're going to be rolling out for the first time some education requirements to obtain the license and to renew. So we expect to see that number continue to grow ahead of that deadline. The next report is the report on renewal activity. A little bit different here in that we're comparing fiscal year 22 data to 2020, and that's because all of these licenses renew on a 2-year cycle. The broker and sales agent renewal rates are holding steady to our historical numbers, and same really for all of those license types listed on this report. The next page is the license holder counts. And this is a 13-month comparison. What we've done here is combined active and inactive broker, sales agents, and then we give you a total of brokers and sales agents. So through the end of June, we were at 224,000 just sales agents and broker license holders. You'll see an increase, a pretty steady increase in each license type of the number of license holders, and that is driven by the number of sales agents. The next page is a graphical presentation broken down by license type. And you'll see the trends there. And the last page in my report is application processing times. This is also a 13-month comparison. Our goal is to provide a response to documents submitted for an application within 14 calendar days. You will note that that 14-day goal was exceeded with real estate inspector applications this month, or for the month of June. We did a deeper dive, and it revealed that we completed our review on 3 real estate inspector applications in the month of June, and on one of those we exceeded that goal, and that was enough to throw off that average. So not a huge issue or any indicator of any change that needed to take place. It was like a misfiling of documents received for one application. When you only have 3, that number will get adjusted. And that concludes my report, if there are no other questions.
Any questions? Commissioner Woodruff.
I was just going to say, I think that it's interesting that, we've seen a 8% decline in new applications. We've got, even though the renewals held somewhat steady, they were down as a percentage. And I think will be a continuing trend. Given the economic, conditions we're seeing, and the number of people that came into the industry over the last couple of years, I think it would be interesting to see, how many people, particularly on renewal, stay in this, and that's already starting to show up. So I think we made some adjustments in the budget to contemplate that, and there's some discussion about that, but, I think, it looks like the budget are going to be pretty much on target, because I think that'll continue for the foreseeable future. Anyway, just want to make that point.
I'd just like to look at page 29 on the application processing time. Sales agents, it's 3.71. And I mean, nearly every month is below 4 or 5 days. The processing where you can check it online, I'm sure that has to be a huge help, and probably saves on the phone calls also, where you can see documents received, fingerprints received, whatever. And so that's phenomenal. I mean, to get it processed in less than 5 business days is just incredible. So, yeah, thank you. Individual brokers, there's still a lot of work and verification and stuff, but yeah.
Well, and that's one of our specialty applications.
Right, exactly.
Because of the experience that's being reviewed, the active time, the much more greater education requirements. But I definitely appreciate that. Sales agents are the one we start our new team members on. We never have a shortage of sales agent applications, so you get to kind of see every flavor, every type of application, a transcript, the ones that come straight through with approved provider courses. So it's a really good training ground for us, and then we kind of move on from there into the more specialized applications.
And I know as a practicing broker, I can go in there and check the process too.
Yeah.
And so anyway, good numbers. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
That'll let go on this call volume, email volume, just because, years ago, well, where are we? It's been, when'd you send it in? Oh, one day ago. Of course, they'd always tell you 30 minutes or something, but, that one application is really, very, very useful. And hopefully, whether it's emails, calls, whatever you're getting across the line, reduce those to.
And as a broker, you can trust but verify
Yeah,
when it was sent in. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Next up, Michael Malloy, Director of Enforcement. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, Chair, Commissioners. I'll wait 1 second. All right. Director of Enforcement, Michael Malloy. The first report you have here is the E1 report, the case status report. So far, it reflects that the division itself has closed over 200 more cases than we've opened so far this year. Consumer-related complaints against brokers, sales agents, and other license types remains about steady from what we had last fiscal year. Basically, the big change from this year to last year is we're opening less application investigations and fitness determinations, and overall that will reflect, I think fiscally, probably opening about 500 less than we opened last year. So right around probably 6,500. Last year we opened over 7,000. So moving on to my next report, the case aging report reflects that 98% of the complaints are within 1 year of old. Also, the complaints within the 6 to 12 month time frame has improved over the fiscal year. It was originally around 28%, it's now 21%. And that 12 to 18 months has improved as well. You will note that there is 3 cases there at 24 to 30 months. That case was held at Heritage SOA in May, and actually the PFD came back last week favorably for the commission. However, due to statutory requirements, we won't hear that until November. So after November, we'll be able to knock those 3 out time-wise. Since on the top of case aging, I just want to report some progress regarding increasing staffing to improve our overall case aging. Later in the meeting, you'll have up for approval a budget that will include money to increase staffing. This staffing will, just as a reminder, will increase in 3 areas: hiring additional attorneys, legal assistants, and investigators. As you're aware, we've had some turnover over this past year, but we've already taken some proactive methods to curb that. And if you guys do approve the budget, I plan to quickly post for those positions. Currently, we're actually in anticipation of the budget being approved. We've already posted for 3 attorney positions because those positions in general are harder to find and fill with the market the way it is. We have had some interviews. So far, no acceptances on offers, but we have had some positive interviews, so I'm optimistic that we're going to find some people to fill those positions. The other positions I will plan to post quickly if the budget is approved. And will start reporting on the case aging in the next fiscal year on a regular basis. Now to my final report, the E3 report. Really hasn't been any really significant changes to report. Is there any questions on what I talked about today?
Question. On the aging and the 12 to 18 month, there's 12 cases there. Are all of those at SOA, or?
They're in the
Can you talk
process
about
of either being negotiated or set at SOA, yes.
Okay.
Commissioner Miller.
I have a question. Now, help me understand this report on page, I guess it's 30. You had cases received, let's take September. It was 517, but then you had 575 that were closed. So that's from prior months?
Yes.
Okay, so that means you got a lot of cases.
Yeah,
Because
any given
every
time.
month, it seems like you're closing more than you received.
Yes, because there's residuals from the past year that's processed, so
Yeah.
more always coming in.
Yeah, but when I see this, you have fewer being received every month. At some point,
Yes.
there should be something less.
Yeah,
When do you perceive that to happen?
It's difficult to say. I mean, if cases increase, then, but I mean, what really comes down to it, at least for the case aging, is there's a lot of cases looking to be processed at the attorney level that go through the whole investigative process and everything, so that takes a little more time.
No, I understand the process.
But I see what your question is about the trend of, we're closing more than we're opening. This has just been a progressive thing we've actually lowered over the past several years as well.
Okay, so it means you have really a backlog of old cases.
They're not a big backlog, but during, like with turnover, there was some stuff that got old.
Yeah.
Some cases. I think with the extra staffing and where we're progressing, given any additional turnover, I think the numbers are going to look much better next year.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Mike, I have a curiosity question. Would your staff rather work with a broker's attorney or with the broker themselves when you have complaints? And does it add time?
It sometimes adds time with an attorney, because if it's a busy attorney, then we may be sitting around waiting for them, because at least if it goes out for investigation, we can't call the broker up and talk to them or the sales agent, because the attorney needs to be present. But it really varies. I mean, sometimes we can knock it out. I don't really think we really have a preference either way. I mean, sometimes attorneys can make the issue a little more difficult than others, but that's just being an attorney, unfortunately.
You're right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, I'll just follow up. I mean, again, 21% between 6 and 12 months, that's a huge improvement. And I know with the new investigators and attorneys and everybody, we're going to get the ones out quicker, from 0 to 6 months out quicker. And you are making up a huge backlog. I mean, I remember the numbers being a lot larger. So I look forward to the increased staff to get them turned quicker, because I think the general feeling in the industry is, if we send something to TREC, it's 6 months before we get an answer. Is it really worth it? And so if we can get that down to less than 6 months, I'm not going to say a number, but less than 6 months and above 0, I think the license holders will appreciate it. And I think in that same instance, I think we'll have more complaints, because they realize that things will be taken care of. So I think it's kind of a 6 one way, half a dozen the other. So thank you. Commissioner Russell.
There will be an impact probably when we do our new licensing system as well, because they'll allow online complaints. So
some of these things take time just because of time limits that they have, that they should respond to you, and some respond more quickly than others. So some of them, it happens because it takes, if you've been given 1 to 100 days, they may wait 98. So you're dealing with timeframes that you don't necessarily have control, but they have a certain amount of time to make responses, and you have a certain amount of time to respond to them. Is that correct?
They have time limits to respond to those. I mean, those turnaround times aren't significantly very large. I mean, they're required 14 days to respond. If something's sent out for an investigator, investigators, most of the investigations are turned around within 6 months. But we are making strides to improve that, to push that closer to 3 to 4 months. And with the new hires, I think we'll be able to hopefully get closer to that. It's just having the attorneys look at it, to get their eyes on it sooner, but also having more attorneys' eyes to look at them. They're all required. They do have a standard quota, so they're on average they close about 16 complaints per month. So add a couple more attorneys. That's additional numbers that Commissioner Williams was talking about earlier that can be put towards the closing numbers.
Thank you.
Commissioner Pena.
I just wanted to add some context into this, that 5,293 cases in an entire year or fiscal year to date is a lot. It's a lot of volume. And so when you look at the aging of the cases, in the 12 to 18 we have 12, and the 24 to 30 we have 3, and obviously those are unusual circumstances that cause the cases to drag on, right? But putting it into context, 5,000 cases come in and 5,000 cases go out. That's a lot of cases coming in, and so I would imagine that in some of them you clear out very quickly, and others not so much, and so it just depends on the nature of
the consumer-related complaints, which I'm hoping with the new licensing system I can separate the categories a little better to give you better numbers. About 50% of these are background history related, so some of those get turned around same day, or definitely well within the 6 months, unless they want to take it to a SOA hearing, and then those are usually, those are the ones that the commission hears for denials or revocations.
What is the volume of cases that there's nothing further in the matter, right? You don't find anything and you just move on.
You mean like no jurisdiction? And that would fall into that category. So far we've had like 151 no jurisdiction cases. Those are the ones that basically are closed within a few days, because the legal system will look at it and say, well, this is not brokerage activity. But majority, as you see here, majority of the complaints that people file, we have jurisdiction to review.
Okay. Yeah, I just find that curious that that's a lot of cases. And so just trying to add context to what the entire department.
The team works, we're very conscious of it. We set internal goals. And to get that, it's a pride thing for us to at least close more complaints than we open than we received, even if it's just a nominal amount. We're at least keeping ahead of the curve and not falling behind, because in past years we have fallen behind, which then you have to dig yourself out later on, unfortunately.
Yeah, I believe as the agency grows, and we're moving in a really positive direction because of you guys being license holders, the cases are going to grow. The only thing that I'm really looking at is the number. It has at some point, the number that's coming in and the number that are going out needs to be somewhere less. So you have to be able to catch up your backlog, because if not, the numbers are wrong.
No, we're doing that currently, because if you've seen like in September, the 0 to 6 months was in the 60th percentile, and now it's 77. So there has been a trend progressively towards the positive end. Yes, sir.
On your unlicensed activity investigations, how many of those are inspectors?
We get very few. I'm a lot of them are license holders that have expired and didn't either realize it or intentionally went to continue to do business. I don't recall one where, as I did inspector-related complaints for several years before I became director, recall one that an actual person that had zero experience was, out there performing inspector activity. I would say on this list, it has to be below 5.
Thank you.
All right, anything else? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next up, Steve Rapp, Director of IT. Let's ramp it up.
Good morning, Chair Kestner and Commissioners. It's my pleasure to be here before you. Steve Rapp, Director of IT. You got me all thrown off now. As you recall, the IT report presented today shows the web utilization and the percentage of applications, renewals, and transactions that occurred online for the month of June 2022. This includes a comparison to the prior fiscal year to date as well. As you can see, web traffic continues to show a slight decline from this time last year, around 7%. Online activity for initial applications, renewals, and sponsorship transactions have remained consistent with previous months and previous fiscal year to date. Page 2 is a 13-month graphical representation of that data. And that concludes my report. Are there any questions I can answer for you today?
Any questions? All right, thank you very much. Renata Williams, Chief Financial Officer. Good morning.
Hello, good morning. Let's see. All right. Good morning, Chair Kestner and Commissioners. Renata Williams, Chief Financial Officer. I'll be presenting the June staff reports for the Financial Services Division. Starting on page 36, you will find our quarterly budget analysis. This data is through June 30th. We've collected $12.2 million, which is 83% of our targeted revenue collection. We are on target with our collection. On the next page, this gives you a visual representation of our revenue. Again, it shows you what our projected revenue is for the FY, how much we've actually collected, and how much is remaining to be collected according to our projections. As you can see, our license fees make up 90% of the revenue. Miscellaneous fees are 4%, and education and exam are 3% each. On the next page, page 38, this is our quarterly expense analysis. Again, this is data through June 30th. Our expenditures were $11.5 million, which is 67% of our projected expenditure target. We're slightly below the 83.3% of our budgeted expenditures, but I'm not concerned that our expenses are trending lower. We were actually projecting to have more expenditures related to the ramp project, but due to the length and the complexity of the contracting processes, we have not had those expenditures, which in turn affects our rate of execution. The next page, let's see here. This gives you a graphical visual representation of our expenses. Same thing, it gives you what our budgeted expenditures were, how much we've actually spent in those various categories, and the amount remaining available to be spent on our budgeted expenditures. Our personnel costs make up 82% of our expenses, while our other operating expenses make up the remaining 18%. Moving now to page 40. This gives you a monthly activity view of our revenue collection compared to our expenses. And on the left side of the chart is current year, and on the right side of the chart is FY21. So you can kind of look and see how we've done month over month and year over year. Moving to page 41, we will begin going over our holdings reports. The TREC operating account had one security that matured and was reinvested, and we had an ending balance of $13.9 million. On page 42, the real estate recovery account had one security that matured and was reinvested as well. We have $524,000 reserved for potential payments within the next 90 days, with $3.7 million as the remaining balance. On page 43, The real estate inspection recovery account has a balance of $604,741.59 and no pending payments. This concludes the Financial Services Division report. If there are no questions, I will be followed by the Government and Strategic Communications Director, Summer Mandel.
All right, thank you. I've got one question, and I think I ask it every month, and maybe I can remember this month.
Yes, sir.
The recovery fund shows a balance of 3.7. There's 524,000 that is set aside for payments that have already theoretically accrued or that will be paid, correct?
That is correct, sir.
Okay, so we're still
Pretending the outcome of those claims, right?
recovery fund things. Okay,
Yes.
so we're still below the 3.5
Yes,
level.
sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Summer Brandell, Government and Strategic Communications Director, and can you tell me who's responsible for this?
I, Summer Randall,
Okay, I
Government
like
and Strategic
it.
Communications
Thank
Director, am responsible for that. Thank you. So good morning, Chair Kesner and Commissioners. So I'm sure that you check TREC.texas.gov every single day. But for the record, I want to talk about some of the website modifications that we've made. As Executive Director Buckholtz may have mentioned in her remarks, on July 11th, we launched the disciplinary action button, and that is on the top of each license holder's individual page. And when a user clicks on that button, the history, if one exists, will appear. And if there's no history, there's a message saying there is no history from the past 10 years. And 10 years is currently the amount of time we're able to pull from. So Commissioner Lerner, thank you for your leadership in initiating this button. And commissioners, thank you for supporting our work on it. It's been really well received, especially based on some of the reactions we've gotten just watching social media metrics and shares and such. So you may have seen in the article that I wrote about it, there are 2 videos, less than 20 seconds each, just to illustrate what happens when you click the button and there's no history and when there is. And Chair Kesner, I don't know if you knew this, but I used you as the example of someone who has no
Which
disciplinary
History or no history?
no history. So good work there. The other video, it doesn't have any identifying information, but it does show what will pop up when you go to that. So next, in addition to this exciting new tool, I've worked with staffers to consolidate duplicative information across the website, just kind of clean up some things as they come up and make language clearer and more user-friendly. So for example, we cleaned up the fitness determination page, so the information about why you would request it, when to request it, all of that is just in one place, as well as information about filing a complaint. It's kind of all just a one-stop shop. You'll also see in my report some information about our email newsletter open rates, specifically TREC Advisor, Education Connection, and Inspector Insight. As a reminder, open rates is the number, signifies the number of people who have opened an email among all total recipients of that email. So you can see here that Education Connection has a really strong open rate with nearly or more than 50% of recipients opening that email. And as the name suggests, those are our education providers. So I'm happy to see, but not surprised, that they are keeping track of what we're doing and what we're rolling out for them. For your reference, you'll also see this little benchmark chart down at the bottom. These are stats from Granicus, which is the vendor who provides GovDelivery, which is the email marketing tool that we use. And it suggests that our email open rates are actually consistently higher than their state and local government users, the top like 20% of performers. So we're in that top 20%, but actually kind of better than that. So I think that's really exciting. And finally, as Chair Kessner has noted and Executive Director Buckholtz, there have been a lot of requests for speaking engagements. And so that key messages sheet that Chair Kessner held up, that mirrors much of what they have been discussing, just some high-level talking points about the commission and our work. And so I created that for each of you to have just when you're out there talking to folks, to know some of the stuff we've been talking about. And then on the other side, there's information about who to best contact if you get asked about certain things like speaking requests or enforcement matters or government relations stuff. So really just a quick one-pager reference card for y'all to use. So with that, that concludes my communications report. I'm happy to answer any questions y'all might have.
Commissioner Lerner.
You're doing a great job. Thank you so much. I just have a couple questions, and we've talked about this in the past. Are we going to start coffee with the commission or anything similar to that sometime soon?
Yes, thank you for asking that question. So one idea that we've been kicking around that I will admit I have put to the side to focus on some of these other things that are coming up is maybe a little podcast because so many of our license holders are on the go. And I think that it would make it a lot easier for them to follow along if they could receive it, listen in their car, that kind of thing. So that's one idea that we're kicking around. But yes, because there is a lot more engagement when we do videos and audio and things like that.
If we do a podcast, does that take away from people being able to interact? That's the only question.
I think that's a great point, but it would be important to me in promotions and rolling that out to be asking people, what questions you have for us, following up what questions came for you, or what do you want to hear about. So there would be a component of engagement that would happen complementary to the actual product.
Perfect. So that kind of rolls into this other question. Do we have any statistics, because I know what you've been doing is working, of how many more followers or likes or whatever it is that there is that you've been getting?
Yes. So we're doing pretty well. In fact, a fellow real estate commission in another state contacted me to ask, how did you get so many followers? And I said, I don't know. I guess we're just super cool. No, I think that posting information more regularly, there's just been a lot of organic following, frankly. And we've also gotten some good shares from like Texas Realtors, for instance. They shared disciplinary action stuff. I know that there are some private Facebook groups that share our content. And so pretty much every day we're getting new followers. I want to say we're about 33,000 on Facebook. And that, again, that's just kind of every day it's being added on. But I can get you specific data on that other than just off the top of my head. Thank you.
Any other questions? All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. Agenda item number 7 is report by executive committee. It's on page 47 in the material. Just basically, we met July 11th. We talk about staff, full-time employees. We talk about hold times. Rule changes have taken a big part of our time as far as rule changes, as you will see later. Also talked about the disciplinary action and maybe different forms or whatever, or just doing what we do better, maybe the increased staff or whatever. Also give an update on everything going on, whether it's the unauthorized practice of law, the broker responsibility working group, ESAC, just a lot of things. I really appreciate the executive, Commissioner Hargraves and Commissioner Miller and staff taking time out once a month to go over, what's going on. That way we kind of know what's going on. But anyway, the material's on page 47. I'll be glad to answer any questions. If there are none, we will go to agenda item number 8, and that is the Audit Committee. Commissioner Pena.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. The Audit Committee met on May 26th. We did meet with our internal auditors to discuss the current internal audit plan and the last installment of their work. regarding account reconciliations. And so we did receive our first draft early last week. I did do a Sunday afternoon read of that first draft, but I'd like to get the committee together and kind of review that. I had some questions about it, so we'll be working through that final installment of the internal audit. The other thing that we talked about was also the internal audit plan for the coming year 2023, FY 2023. The internal auditors did send out requests for interviews from the commission. I'm sure some of y'all saw those, and so I'd encourage everybody to respond to those, to their request for information from the commission, as well as I believe they did inquiries from management and staff as well. So that's on the way. Based on those responses, the audit plan for FY 2023 is developed, and so that's on the way. The last thing that we did talk about is the RFQ process for the internal auditor. I believe that's closed already. We did receive submissions, so we have to meet as a committee and kind of decide whether we want to deliberate on who we're going to pick as our internal auditors. So that's also in the process. We'll be meeting in the coming weeks and kind of get that going again.
Okay, any questions? And thank you for taking the lead on this, and Commissioner Miller and everybody that's involved. All right, next up, Budget Committee, Commissioner Williams.
Thank you. Commissioner Pena wasn't present at our last meeting, but I tell you, his knowledge and your input has been invaluable to the committee. I thank you. But we was replaced by the Honorable Chairman Scott Kessner, so I knew that it was an important meeting when he came aboard. We really looked at our budget for 2023, and what I've been too redundant, Mrs. Williams is going to give the report a little later. But some of the highlights were our ramp project and how we're going to spend a little more money in 2023. But we feel really good. I've been involved with this TREC for I think 3 years now, and this is the best place. Is it 4? Is it 5 years? Funny how time flies when you're having fun. But it's because of our leadership. Chelsea, you've done a great job by finding the right people and putting them in the right positions. And this is the first time since I've been on this committee that I feel really good about where we are and where we're going and how you guys are really dictating when we spend the dollars. There's going to be some added costs, but it's because we have added dollars. We're in a great position, and one of the things about our ramp project, I really want to look at the hub spending because it's probably one of our largest undertaking as relates to spending dollars with TREC, and I want to make sure that we take a real hard look at how we're using those dollars and how we can help historically underutilized businesses through this. And a lot of times people say, well, we can't find people to do this type of project. Those large companies, because I'm in the construction industry, need to grab a couple of them and bring them with them. That's just my opinion, but we had really good meetings. The investment policy, I really don't, we didn't have any change to it, and I've always had a heartburn because our interest rates are so low that we make on it, but we didn't have any changes to that, and looking forward to 2023. Any questions?
Any questions? Okay. General Counsel Vanessa Burgess will talk about the Unauthorized Practice of Law Working Group.
Good morning. Vanessa Burgess, General Counsel for the record. I'm going to cover agenda items 10 and 11, and there's a little bit of a bridge there, so that's nice. Agenda item number 10 is the report from the Unauthorized Practice of Law Working Group. So that working group has met multiple times over the last few months with a focus on clarifying TREC Rule 537.11 and the TREC contract forms as it relates to the unauthorized practice of law. As you will recall, this group was created in response to multiple public comments received regarding this topic and at the recommendation of the Broker Lawyer Committee. Working group members are Chair Kessner, Commissioner Miller, Ron Walker, who chairs this working group, Rick Albers, Lori Levy, Brian Watts, and Diane McCoy. It's a real powerhouse group right there. And so before you today, amidst all of the contract form changes, of which there are many, is a change that's actually recommended by this group related to special provisions. The group drafted language, which was then debated and amended by the broker-lawyer committee in a special meeting, changing the language in special provisions to note the intended purpose of that section is for informational items and that brokers and agents are prohibited from practicing law. Corresponding changes were made in the TREC amendment regarding the prohibition against the practice of law. This group has also been working to clarify the language in 537.11 relating to the unauthorized practice of law, and I think the Commission can expect to see those draft changes possibly at the November Commission meeting. Still working on a few of those, but there are some changes clarifying informational items, things like that. So big changes ahead. Hopefully those will be positive changes. And I can take agenda item 11 as well. I'll use as my bridge over into that I would think that unauthorized practice of law working group, that really is a group of volunteers who have tackled this issue in numerous meetings, and I would be remiss, though she will be upset that I'm calling attention to her, if I did not highlight the work of Abby Lee in both that group and the broker-lawyer committee group. Her working knowledge of the TREC contract forms is incredible. Her ability to edit things while they're on the screen, unimaginable to me. And so just a big thank you and a highlight, plus she's great. I will stop. Okay, agenda item 11, Broker-Lawyer Committee. So the Broker-Lawyer Committee has met twice since the last commission meeting. The committee voted to move forward with a series of recommended updates to the TREC contract forms. Due to the timing of these changes and related rules that were already out for proposal, some will need to be reproposed. And so you'll hear some reproposals by Abby during the rule presentation, and that's why it's just to have consistent one-time changes to those contract forms. Anytime there's changes to the contract forms, it's best to do them all at once and let those changes settle in versus continuous changes to the forms that our license holders are using on a daily basis. So Abby will also provide you with highlights of those recommended changes in her rule presentation. So she's going to cover the highlights. Those changes are covered in full in your materials, and they are extensive. So before you today, you'll see some new language within the Farm and Ranch contract that is the product of multiple meetings of the Farm and Ranch Working Group and the full Broker-Lawyer Committee. You'll also see some changes from a couple of other Broker-Lawyer Committee working groups related to cash sales, repairs, and the condo contract. The committee is ready to present these changes in full for recommendation to propose and was mindful of the timing of the changes as it relates to the most recent contract form changes, which were back in 2021, and also to the upcoming legislative sessions. They really wanted to get them in here so that they could be pre-proposed and potentially adopted at that November meeting. A final note is the recommendation born from the Unauthorized Practice of Law Working Group, which was considered at a special meeting of the Broker-Lawyer Committee. Members of the committee took that recommended language and they made their own edits, which is what you'll see before you today in the new special provisions paragraph, with the hope to provide more clarity to agents and brokers about what can be included in terms of informational items and a clear statement regarding that prohibition against the practice of law by brokers and agents. As you are aware, the Broker-Lawyer Committee conducts marathon sessions of contract form review during its meetings, and we anticipate a very long October meeting in response to those changes if the rules are moved forward today. Thank you.
Any questions? I'm sure there'll be plenty later. Thank you. Next up, Jennifer Wheeler, Director of Education and Examination, talking about ESAC's committee.
Yes, good morning again, everyone. I am here before you standing in for ESAC Chair Charles Porter, who is spending some quality time with his grandson. So I'll be presenting the ESAC report for you today. ESAC last met on July 7th and discussed pre-licensing course credit and the qualifying course outline for both real estate brokerage and property management. The committee discussed whether to further consider recommending a time limit for accepting and awarding pre-licensing course credit, Any update on this would require rule change. Staff has volunteered to gather some data on this issue and present to the committee for discussion at the October meeting. The Broker Responsibility Working Group recommended that ESAC open up the property management qualifying course outline for review. At its last meeting, the committee requested data from staff on whether license holders who received complaints had completed the 30-hour property management course. These data are not available in our current database, but Director of Enforcement Michael Malloy shared the enforcement action data related to property management the agency is able to track. Committee members will continue its discussion about the course outline and possible revisions or additions at its next committee meeting in October. Staff also presented a draft qualifying course outline for real estate brokerage, the 30-hour qualifying course, incorporating the committee's suggestions from its last meeting to add content related to the broker-sales agent relationship. Lost my place. The committee accepted the draft outline with no additional changes and recommended it for proposal at the November commission meeting. So you'll see that at our next quarterly meeting. As I believe it was Chelsea mentioned earlier, the agency has received over 90 applications, 93 to be specific, applications to fill 6 upcoming ESAC positions. We'll be seeking to fill 2 education member positions and 4 license holder member positions. An announcement on new appointees will be made at the November commission meeting, now that we have our committee put together. The next meeting of ESAC is Monday, October 3rd, and the committee will discuss whether the qualifying real estate brokerage course should be made mandatory for sales agent apprentice education. We'll continue the discussion on the qualifying course outline for property management and publicly accessible information related to exam pass rates. And this concludes the ESAC report, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Just one on the brokerage being mandatory for SAE. Were y'all thinking about putting that in as a renewal or pre-license or strictly renewal?
It would be required for a sales agent. So with the new changes to the course content to really address that sales agent, the broker's responsibility to the sales agent, but also the sales agent's expectations of the broker. The consideration and the discussion is, should that be a requirement? So right now, the sales agents have 90 hours of pre-licensing coursework. Should we require 30 of those hours to be the real estate brokerage course?
Okay.
That's the discussion. So.
Are we going to vote on that? I'm kidding. Okay.
Eventually.
All right.
Yeah.
Any other questions? All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
General Counsel Vanessa Burgess on the Broker Responsibility Working Group.
Hey. Good morning. Agenda item 13 is the report from the Broker Responsibility Working Group. I'm doing this report on behalf of the chair, Chance Brown, who is unable to attend today. The Broker Responsibility Working Group met on July 13th and voted to recommend 2 proposals to rules related to broker oversight and sales agents' response times. The group voted to recommend a new rule, 535.157, that requires a broker or sales agent to respond to their principal, a broker or sales agent representing another party to a real estate transaction, or an unrepresented party to a real estate transaction within 2 calendar days. The group also proposed amending 535.2I5 to increase the minimum number of times a broker must ensure the assistance and coaching for new brokerage activity performed by an agent from 1 to 3 times. And again, that's a new type of brokerage activity, not just general, your first 3 times and there's no more supervision. It's for each type 3 times in that initial engagement. The committee also proposed amending 535.2J to modify the language of that subsection to accommodate the new rule 535.157, which I just mentioned. So it's important to note that 535.2J still requires a broker or delegated supervisor to respond to their sponsored agents within 2 calendar days of receipt. So that remains in the broker responsibility rule. It's that the response time of 2 days that I mentioned under that new rule 535.157 within the 2 calendar days, that all exists for both brokers and agents within that new rule. But that responsibility of the broker to respond, a delegated supervisor to respond to a sponsored agent, is still within the broker responsibility rule. So there's been no change to that component of it. Staff is currently working with the governor's office on these proposals, and once ready, the current plan is to present these changes to the commission for a vote. And I can answer any questions if you have any.
Commissioner Miller.
I ran this suggestion of the 2 days to respond by some of our managers, and they said, what about weekends? Because you're talking calendar days. And is there any leeway? Because you can't reach people a lot of times on weekends. What's a solution?
Do you mean, well, let me make sure I understand your question. So if the obligation is to respond within the 2 calendar days, I would think that the act of responding, even if that's to the extent that you're leaving a message, you're sending something, you have responded within those 2 days. You can never guarantee when someone will receive a response, though, right? But it's that act of the actual response.
Okay.
And I imagine that's a comment we'll receive once these do go, and that's something that can be messaged.
I would bet that it is. Also, on basically the mentorship, moving to 3 items instead of just 1. I feel like there's going to be an enforcement, an incapable. It's going to be really hard to enforce. And I just wonder how TREC thinks that that's going to happen when it's not even happening right now.
So I think we can speak to a couple of things on that. Something that Chair Kessner brought up at the last meeting is the power of the rule being there in terms of brokers and agents being able to cite to that requirement. Same with response time, but also that supervision component. So, you know, you'll have an agent who says, but TREC rule says that you've got to help me in these first 3 of this type that I'm doing for the first time. So I think there's power in that. So there's power in the use of it out in the field. In terms of enforcement, that's something that we're going to have to look at. And there hasn't, you know, we've been batting around in that group some ideas. I know Mike, Abby, and I have met several times trying to figure out, okay, well, what, you know, is there a certain document that would be helpful? How do you track all of that? It's not the same as getting broker experience points where, you know, there's an end goal, because this applies to each type of brokerage activity. So I think you're right. It's complicated. The thought is it's a step in the direction. It's that click that Chelsea always talks about of getting us a little bit further in broker responsibility. I think particularly out in the field and us messaging, this is important. This is what we're looking at. These are what brokers are saying are the issues. In terms of how it will be enforced, I don't know the answer to that yet, but I think you're right, it's complicated. But I think if we can get together as an agency, look at what we're seeing, you know, we'll have a method in place for doing that. I know they use a negligence standard right now, and I think that this would just be another avenue pursued somewhat similarly, but I don't have a specific answer on the how.
And let me add to that. I think broker responsibility is like the spoke in the wheel, and there's so many things that connect it. And right now, a broker is responsible for responding within 2 days. It doesn't have to be an affirmative response. It can be a response, I got your message, I will be presenting on Tuesday. As far as the supervision of 3 transactions, right now it just says oversee a transaction. Now we're saying, you know, you've got 3 listings, 3 active, you know, sales, 3 new homes. You need to be, you know, they need to be supervised, and it's going to be messaging. Now, it's all going to go back to the complaint. You know, if they don't file a complaint, nobody's going to know about it. But it's the messaging, and I don't think we've been in a better position as far as messaging and communicating what is responsible than we are now. And I think if we got the brokerage class as a SAE or even a pre-license, that's just, again, communicating another spoke in that wheel about broker responsibility. Because I think a lot of license holders out there now, they don't know what to expect. I mean, they get their 6 classes, they get promulgated contracts, they join the MLS, they think that's it. And we all know that is just it's very important, but it's a very small matter. So I think there's a lot of things that are coming together for broker responsibility, because unfortunately, there's not a simple solution. So I think it's a combination. And it'll go back to enforcement, filing complaints, and communications. And so I think we're heading the right direction, but I know it's only going to be complaint driven. But we can't fix that, because if you get a complaint, you should have the due process. You should be able to face your accusers and everything. So even working with that, we still have to get there. And I think this is a great step. But there are going to be, some concerns.
It's like I always say, too, if you don't have it on the books, you have nothing to enforce. So if the person does turn in a complaint, we can enforce it because it's there. Right now, there's nothing there.
But I agree with all of that, and Commissioner Miller, I agree with your point too. Is how will we enforce it? And I think that's the next step of seeing what will that process look like. I'm always going to say, well, I hope everyone's documenting when they're overseeing these transactions, because that's my favorite answer. Do you have documentation? Yes, I do. Here it is, right? But what does that documentation look like from our standpoint? We've been playing with that. I don't know that there's a clean answer in that regard, but I have full faith that as an agency we can figure that out, and I'm saying that on behalf of Mike and his enforcement team. But that's the conversation, and I think that's a great point.
It seems to me that from an enforcement standpoint, that it's likely to come up when there's a complaint filed for an unrelated matter, and there's an issue, and the investigation is. You're always going to have to. They're going to look. What's your policy look like? Well, A, is it in your brokerage policy? Probably, but then B, the questions of the respondent around, did you receive this kind of training? As opposed to somebody filing a complaint that, it could happen, I guess, directly, but thinking back about how these things sort of play out in practice, that would be my guess around how you would see, it'd be a slow roll, because you'd have to have some of these happen and then get promoted that way. If a broker gets, is unaware, which of course, they shouldn't be, but some will be, as this plays out. But that's probably how the compliance happens, because because I doubt you're going to see, or enforcement rather. I doubt you're going to see too many people just filing on. Right. I guess it's possible an agent could, but anyway, just comments.
Right.
All right. Any other comments? All right. Thank you very much. All right. Agenda item 15, public comments. I don't have anybody that has signed up for public comments. Did anybody want to sign up for public comments? If you do, we will certainly give you time to sign up. Okay. Hearing none, we will go to agenda item 16, and that is contested cases. Okay. Director of Enforcement, Michael Maloney. Okay.
I don't think so. Yeah.
Okay. Agenda item 16A is consideration and possible action regarding proposal for decision in the matter of SOA docket number 329220611, REC Emily Ann Shepard versus TREC. Is there anyone here to speak on behalf of Ms. Shepard? Yes. Okay. Director Malloy, okay.
I don't have an attorney here with me.
1 minute.
And you are Ms. Shepard?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
So, great. Glad to know you're here. He starts, and then you'll go.
Okay.
Just stick close. Just stay close.
Okay. Director Malloy.
All right. Good morning again. So just in general, we have 3 PFDs up for consideration. This is the first one, 16A, Emily Ann Shepard versus TREC. This matter, Ms. Shepard was seeking a sales agent license. She had the burden of proof to meet the Commission's honesty, trustworthiness, and integrity standard. Her application was denied on the basis of her criminal history and her failure to disclose several past offenses and a penny offense at the time of the application was filed. Prior to the hearing, Ms. Shepard was successful in sealing and expunging 2 offenses. However, these were not sealed or expunged at the time of the offense, or time of the application that was filed. You may note in the PFD, this is properly documented and noted by the ALJ, and the only thing that was taken into consideration was not the offenses themselves, but the fact that they were failed to be disclosed upon the time of application, that's when you need to disclose all your criminal offenses. The ALJ used all the Chapter 53 factors when weighing the determination, and the judge was not persuaded that Ms. Shepard's explanation for not disclosing her complete criminal history to the Commission, and to determine there was very little other mitigating factors that helped the applicant in her attempt to meet her burden of proof. Therefore, her application for licensure was denied, and staff recommends the adoption of the PFD with the recommendation that Ms. Shepard's application for sales agent license be denied. The attorney that had on the matter is unable to be here today. However, I'm available for questions if necessary.
Any questions at this point? Commissioner Pena.
The cases, when, and I do realize that you didn't consider these with respect to what the actual case was, but rather the non-disclosure of these cases. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
That's one of the factors we take into consideration. It basically attributes to their overall honesty or misrepresentation when applying.
So if a case is expunged, I mean, it basically doesn't even exist, right? So
yeah, we could not use, that's why the judge made a note, they could not use the actual criminal offense in the Chapter 53 evaluation. And the fact that it was not disclosed at the time of application, it was not expunged or sealed at the time that it was thing was applied. That when Ms. Shepard applied.
okay, so sealed versus expunged, what is the difference?
It really probably depends on what the state's requirements are. And basically in these situations, we couldn't consider these criminal offenses they occurred.
So it appears to me that a lot of these cases are a matter of timing, right? And so if a case is expunged, then they don't have to disclose that, right?
No, they don't. At the time of application.
So sitting here today, if the applicant were to apply again and not mention of the cases that are mentioned,
That were expunged?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. They would not have to do that.
Those would go away completely, right?
Yes, because they've been expunged, not at the time of licensure, like that you're getting at.
Okay.
But no, if it's been expunged and they went and applied, let's say they got expunction done in June of this year, and when applied today, they would not have to disclose that. And if they do, that's fine, but we don't, that's not taken into any consideration.
So on item number 1, was that case expunged subsequently to the application? On page 67?
It was the Colorado and Kansas cases,
Okay, that was 2 and 3.
2 and 3.
Okay, so 1 still remains, right?
There was other cases that were not expunged, that were considered in this case.
So 2 and 3 are expunged, and 2 is a misdemeanor, right?
Yes.
And 4 and 5 remain?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes, sir. And there was a pending criminal offense at the time.
Which was ultimately dismissed, right?
The pending offense, yes, I believe.
That case was dismissed?
I would have to go and double check. But at the time of the application, it was still pending.
Okay. Thank you.
So it was required to be disclosed on the application.
Right. Right. Mm-hmm.
All right, any other questions? Commissioner Russell?
Okay, so at the time that she made application, all of these were to be considered for
They were all convictions under the law.
They were all
Convictions.
Okay.
So they were all offenses we could take into consideration for her application, yes.
But since then, which ones,
The 2 and number 3 on there on page.
2 and 3,
Yeah.
would not be considered if she,
They're not considered criminal convictions, no. Well, they're gone because they were expunged.
okay, thank you.
But they were active at the time, and they would have been required to have been disclosed.
Yes.
Right.
Okay. You have questions? All right, Ms. Shepherd? Thank you for attending. We're going to limit it to 5 minutes, if that's okay.
Thank you. At the time, I thought that my criminal convictions had been expunged previously by an attorney in Denver. However, after review, that was not the case. Since then, I can't see it up there, but the conviction out of Oregon is in the process currently of being expunged. It was accepted by the DA, and they're just processing it. They figure by next year in June it will be off of there. And the 2 current case, number 3, I think it was, and number 4, were accepted by the Criminal Court of Appeals. However, I withdrew the notice to allow an appellate attorney to work the case, and he expects that they will be expunged after the evidentiary hearing. And I have his name of record if you'd like to talk to him. It's Stan Schwieger out of Waco, Texas, 600 Austin Avenue, Suite 12, Waco, and his phone number is 254-752.
Shepard, I think we've got to stay on the record. What's everything that was considered in the proposal for decision?
So it's just 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay, so number 2 is gone. It was, yeah, number 2 is gone. Number 3 is gone. Robertson County is the Waco attorney. And number 5 is also the Waco attorney. And I disclosed 4 and 5 on the application. However, I said this matter is being appealed through the DA because I had a lease, so.
Okay. Any questions for Ms. Shepherd?
Can you explain your rationale for not disclosing the pending case that?
I was in a sale barn, and I had spoken to the district attorney. I didn't think it was going to come up. However, they would not give me a paper to give to TREC when I applied. And I did note, the county clerk did send a letter so I could put that into the application after the fact at the SOA hearing, which I did put in there, that that's what was happening at that time.
But you did not disclose it in your initial application?
No, because it wasn't a conviction.
But it was pending, right? Were you asked if there was a
I
pending?
was under the impression that it was being dismissed because it was not actual anything that they could even investigate. So that's what the letter says from the county clerk, is that they didn't even consider it.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Yes.
Commissioner Williams.
Yeah. And you're familiar with TREC, and you're familiar with our council and how we're going to look at all the details.
Yes.
Why do you feel you didn't, divulge the information with maybe a reason and explanation?
The attorney in Denver told me that my record had been sealed, and on the application, when I disclosed that I was appealing it with the district attorney, it is because I had a lease on the property, and the district attorney at the time didn't tell me I would have to go through an appellate court. I thought that he could just go in there and reverse it. So.
Well, I mean, I understand everybody want to make a living and things like that, but it's best to divulge all the information as much as possible, because we have over 200 license holders, 200,000 license holders. So, and all the people are not perfect, believe me. So, and I know I'm not. So I think, we'll look at the case and come up with an answer.
Any other questions? Okay, Ms. Shepherd, what we will do is we will hear the other two, then we will go into executive session, and then we will come back and probably have some more questions for you. Director Malloy, would you like any follow-up?
No, sir.
Okay. All right. So if you'll, thank you. We will now go to question, Commissioner Russell.
At any point in time, you say, they told me this, they sent me here. Did you get a piece of paper that verified? I mean, these are things that affect your life. Did you get anything in writing from them?
From the district attorney in Buffalo? Yes, it is in the SOA document saying from the county clerk to whom it may concern, saying that I did ask for that document, but the DA didn't give that to me. However, she was making it in writing that they didn't see anything to investigate, and therefore they did not take the case. The DA would not take the case.
Was that provided to TREC?
Yeah, yes, it was, but it was not provided at the time of the application. It was provided at the time of the SOA hearing as a exhibit.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay, agenda item 16B is consideration and possible action regarding proposal for decision in the matter of SOA docket number 329221506, Rachel Oliveris versus TREC. Is there anybody here on behalf of Ms. Oliveris? Seeing none, Director Malloy.
This is another denial of application for a sales agent license. I think this one's fairly straightforward. Ms. Oliveris was convicted of the felony offense of theft of property. The theft was nearly $50,000 and was from the city of Harlingen when she was a manager of the arts and entertainment department. If you review the facts in the PFD, it outlined that basically she used her position to steal from her employer, the city of Harlingen, by renting out facilities, and some of them would be cash transactions, and she would keep the money and not account for them. while it's just a single felony offense, the record shows she did do it 49 times, and she did it while she was in her 30s, which is not what we would consider a youthful discretion, and clearly not a one-time offense if she did it 49 times. The ALJ applied all the factors and determined due to her recent discharge from parole that she had not yet met her burden of proof to show her honesty and trustworthiness, and recommended denial of the application. So staff recommends adoption of this PFD and with the recommendation that Ms. Olivares' application for sales agent license be denied. The attorney that handled this matter, Beverly Ravenberg, is available for questions if necessary.
Any questions? Hearing none, we will move to agenda item 16C, in consideration and possible action regarding proposal for the decision in the matter of SOA docket number 329221799 REC TREC versus David Reynoso Varela. Is there anyone here to speak for Mr. Varela? Okay, Director Malloy.
Okay. This is another denial of application for a sales agent license. Mr. Varela has some serious criminal background. In 2017, he pleaded guilty for first-degree felony offense of aggravated robbery and a third-degree felony offense of evading arrest with a vehicle. He was incarcerated, and he's currently on probation, and he was denied from early release from his probation. He will get released in 2024. And after the ALJ weighed all the factors, determined that while he was kind of going the right direction, he just wasn't, it just wasn't the time yet to provide him the ability to gain the sales agent license, and recommended that the license application be denied. Staff recommends adoption of the PFD with the recommendation that Mr. Varela's application for sales agent license be denied, and the attorney that handled the matter here, Ken Herring, is here for questions if necessary.
Any questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
That concludes agenda item number 16. We will go to agenda item 17, executive session to discuss pending litigation or obtain advice of legal counsel on agenda items pursuant to the Texas Government Code 551.071. I figure we will be in executive session till approximately 1 p.m. So we are adjourning for executive session at 11:51 a.m. We will go back into session at 1:06 p.m. We will go back to agenda item number 16B, and that's possible action regarding proposal for decision in the matter of SOA docket number 329221506 REC versus Rachel Alvarez versus TREC. Anyone here for Ms. Alvarez? Deputy Director Malloy. Any additional questions on agenda item 16B for Director Malloy? Any comments? Hearing none, I would be in favor of a motion.
I move to adopt the PFD as written.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Miller, second by Commissioner Hartgraves. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? Motion carries. We will now go to agenda item 16C, SOA docket 329221799, REC TREC versus David Reynoso Varela. Anybody here for Mr. Varela? Seeing none. Commissioners, any questions, concerns for Director Malloy? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion.
I move to adopt the PFD as written.
Second.
I have a motion by Commissioner Lerner, second by Commissioner Woodruff. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Anybody abstaining? Motion carries. Going back to agenda item 16A, SOA docket 329220611, REC, Emily Ann Shepard versus TREC. Is Ms. Shepard in the room? Okay. Director Malloy, any questions for Director Malloy? Comments? Just real quick, I want to commend staff, not only for this one, but the other. Okay, Ms. Shepard. Okay, Director Malloy, would you let Ms. Shepard? Yep. Okay, Ms. Shepard, we did call 16A, and we heard your statement earlier. The commissioners might have some questions, concerns. Any questions for Ms. Shepard? Okay, I've got one, and when you were filling the application, and I'm not sure how familiar you are with the Real Estate Commission, and our sole purpose is to protect the consumer. And that's why we specifically ask that question, are there any pending whatever, and whether they were going to be expunged or going to be dismissed or whatever, it still needed an affirmative answer and a correct answer. And I've got to commend our enforcement, because they did what they were supposed to do. And with the Real Estate Commission the way it is, there is an appeal process, and it goes to the SOA judge. And misfortunate or whatever, but the way the application was filled, the SOA judge had no other choice except do what the statute says. And there's a lot of times that, you know, good or bad, we have to follow what the statute says, and that's what the statute says. And you know, if I personally was filling that application and they asked me that, take time to make a call and see, you know, if it was, you know, expunged or whatever, and because you really left the commission no choice but to make the decision they made.
Okay. I did call the district attorney, and he said that the case was no longer like pending, so that's why they received a letter from Buffalo saying that it was pending, because she said she couldn't quite get the documentation to give to me to give to you guys. And so that's, I was being extremely honest, but it was supposed to be dismissed, but they just wouldn't give me the documentation until the county clerk had absolute permission to, and so that's why that was on there.
Okay. Well, you know, one of the biggest things is, you know, is the trustworthiness, and that's why when you put no and you put yes but not disclosed, and then you put no pending, that's, you know, that's the letter of the law. Mm-hmm. And so anyway, that's the way I read the PFD. Any comments, Commissioner Woodruff?
I would agree with you on that, but I have a motion to adopt the PFD as written.
Okay, we have a motion to adopt the PFD as written.
A second.
A motion made by Commissioner Woodruff, second by Commissioner Williams. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? Okay, motion carries. Ms. Shepard, again, thank you for appearing. I do hope you realize the position we're in and what our sole purpose is, and that's why that application is so critical. So thank you.
All right, thank you.
Yes, Commissioner Lerner.
I just wanted to thank Mike and his team for what they did on these 3 cases. I think they did a great job of analyzing the facts and applying all of the rules that they have to get to their conclusions. And I think a statement is being made that we have to, as real estate professionals, have to be held to a higher standard. The consumers want this. They need to be protected and do not need people that do not have the characteristics that we ask for when people apply for a license.
I totally agree, and I think, Director Malloy and his staff did a wonderful job presenting 3 PFDs to the SOA and them coming back with no changes, adopted as presented, and I think, like Commissioner Lerner said, you should be recognized for that. Okay, let's move to agenda item number 17. I'm sorry, let's go to, how about 18? Is that okay? Go to Recovery Fund, General Counsel, Deputy General Counsel Abby Lee.
Good afternoon. Abby Lee, Deputy General Counsel for the record. Agenda item 18A is discussion and possible action to authorize settlement of recovery fund claims or take other action on RF 21010 Michael Ratan et al. Versus Gilbert Quinones and Gilbert Quinones doing business as Remax Platinum Real Estate.
Okay. I'd entertain a motion.
I move to authorize a settlement payment of $91,449.25.
Second.
Motion made by Commissioner Russell, second by Commissioner Woodruff. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? Motion carries.
Agenda item 18B is discussion and possible action to authorize settlement of recovery fund claims or take other action on RF 22002 Christian Quintanilla versus Cassandra D. Guidry Sessions, also known as Queen.
I move to authorize a settlement payment of $2,069 plus 5% post-judgment interest on the eligible amounts awarded in the judgment.
Motion made by Commissioner Russell.
Second.
Second, Commissioner Williams. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? Motion carries.
Agenda item 18C is discussion and possible action to authorize settlement of recovery fund claims or take other action on RF 22007 International United Technology Group LLC versus Tusk Realty Services LLC.
On agenda item 18C, I move to authorize a settlement payment of $21,323.58.
Second.
Motion made by Commissioner Lerner, second by Commissioner Miller. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? Motion carries.
Agenda item 19 is the report regarding denial of recovery fund claims as follows. RF 22005, Ryan Chance Neal and Amanda Neal versus LT Equity Investments LLC and Lisa D. Turnbrough. This claim was denied because of damages for lost profits, which is what this claim was based on, or what the claim sought, are not reimbursable under the recovery fund. So please note you did receive a copy of the denial letter under separate cover. This item does not require any action by the Commission, but I am available to answer any questions.
Maybe not a question, just a comment for the people attending that are not familiar with the process. In order to receive funds from the recovery fund, there has to be certain things met. Correct. And staff does a really good job making sure that all the steps were cleared and everything was met to actually get money out of the recovery fund, because even though we have $3.5 million in that fund, we still have to be good stewards of that money. So if there is a denial, it is something that was not met in the process, and that's why that recovery fund was denied. And I guess theoretically they could come back if the steps were met and ask, but we do turn them down if they do not meet the steps.
Correct.
Just, okay. All right, agenda item 20.
Do we need to vote?
Agenda item 20 is discussion and possible action to adopt amendments to 22 TAC Chapter 543. In the interest of time, the specific sections up for adoption are listed in the agenda and included in your material. Just a brief summary, the repeal, new rules, and amendments to Chapter 543 are made as a result of the Commission's quadrennial rule review. The repeal and renumbering of these rules make way to add a new definition section for ease of reading. The changes also update terminology for consistency throughout the chapter. And finally, sections 543.5, which is called forms, and 543.13, which is called renewal of registration, correct a reference to a commission form. No comments were received on the amendments as published. Therefore, the staff recommendation is to authorize staff on behalf of the commission to submit for adoption the repeal and new rules in 22 TAC Chapter 543 as presented to the Texas Register, along with any technical or non-substantive changes required for adoption.
Chair, we entertain a motion.
I move that the commission approve staff's recommendation.
Second.
I have a motion by Commissioner Miller, second by Commissioner Woodruff. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? Motion carries. Agenda item number 21.
Agenda item 21 is discussion and possible action to adopt amendments to 22 TAC Chapter 537. The specific sections being referenced or amended are listed in the agenda and included in your materials. And just again to reiterate, I know we talked about this earlier in the meeting, but there is a couple different agenda items on Chapter 537. This one is purely tied to the rules, no forms in this particular agenda item. So just wanted to clarify that. Again, a quick summary. The amendments and new rules to Chapter 537 are made as a result of quadrennial rule review. The changes to the existing rules and add the title of the form adopted by reference in each rule to the rule title. And add clarifying language to specify which forms are for mandatory versus voluntary use by license holders. The new rules pair previously existing forms that were available for voluntary use by license holders with a rule to provide greater clarity about the form's purpose and use. We did receive one comment from the Texas Association of Builders, who believed that the proposed addition of the term mandatory or mandatory use will lead to confusion regarding the right of a property owner to use non-TREC forms, and in turn may delay these transactions. TAB suggested that where the term mandatory has been added to the rules, the statement, unless otherwise permitted under 22 TAC 537.11a, be appended. Staff recommends making no changes at this time in response to TAB's comments. However, as was noted earlier, the Commission is currently reviewing 537.11 and plans to present some recommended changes to that rule, as well as a new definition section that would include definitions of mandatory use and voluntary use. The plan is for that to be presented at the November Commission meeting. So we actually think that this may better address TAB's concerns. So no recommended changes at this time. The staff recommendation is to authorize staff on behalf of the Commission to submit for adoption the amendments and new rules to 22 TAC Chapter 537 as published to the Texas Register, along with any technical or non-substantive changes required for adoption.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to authorize staff to, on behalf of the Commission, to submit for adoption the amendments of the new rules to 22 TAC Chapter 537 as published to the Texas Register, along with any technical or non-substantive changes required for the adoption.
I have a motion, Commissioner Pena.
Second.
Second, Commissioner Woodruff. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? Motion carries. Agenda item number 22.
Agenda item 22 is discussion and possible action to adopt amendments to 22 TAC Chapter 537 as follows. 537.26 Standard Contract Form TREC number 15-5 Seller's Temporary Residential Lease, and 537.27 Standard Contract Form TREC number 16-5 the Buyer's Temporary Residential Lease, and then finally new 537.61 Standard Contract Form TREC number 54-0 Landlord's Floodplain and Flood Notice. So just as a refresher, House Bill 531 requires a landlord to disclose in certain situations whether the landlord is aware that the dwelling is located in a 100-year floodplain and whether the landlord is aware that the dwelling has flooded within the past past 5 years. Because landlords of temporary residential leases are not exempted, the proposed changes and eventual adopted changes, if they are adopted today, create a new flood disclosure notice form and add a new paragraph referencing the notice in the seller's temporary residential lease and the buyer's temporary residential lease. Additionally, the proposed amendments to the Rule 537.26 and 537.27 contain some of those changes we spoke about earlier as a result of the Commission's quadrennial rule review. So they add corresponding contract form titles to the rule titles and add clarifying language that specify that both the forms adopted by reference in these rules are for mandatory use by license holders. I did want to note the fly sheet does contain an error regarding comments. So no comments were received on the forms themselves, but technically that comment from the Texas Association of Builders would also apply here since we're making the same change to the rule. But for the reasons we mentioned earlier, we are not recommending any changes at this time in response to TAB's comment. So therefore, the staff recommendation is to authorize staff on behalf of the Commission to submit for adoption the amendments and new rule to 22 TAC 537 as presented, along with the forms adopted by reference to the Texas Register, along with any technical or non-substantive changes required for adoption. And I will note there are 3 non-substantive changes we have made. We have added lines in paragraph 11. We added a missing to, the word TO, to the notice for buyer's temporary residential lease. And in the new notice form, we swapped the term property with dwelling. So those are 3 non-substantive changes. The recommendation is that the new form, landlord's floodplain and flood notice, is adopted for voluntary use. And the recommendation is that the seller's temporary residential lease and the buyer's temporary residential lease are adopted for voluntary use until September 1st, 2022, at which time their use will become mandatory.
Okay. We move that the Commission approve staff recommendation.
Motion made by Commissioner Williams, second by Commissioner Miller. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? Motion carries. Agenda item number 23.
Agenda item 23 is discussion and possible action to adopt amendments to 22 TAC Chapter 537. The specific sections being amended are listed in the agenda and included in your material. As was mentioned earlier, the Broker Lawyer Committee has met twice since the last Commission meeting. On July 8th, 2022, the committee reviewed the current working drafts of several contract forms as well as public comments. At the most recent meeting on July 29th, the committee reviewed recommended changes from the Unauthorized Practice of Law Working Group. In response to the recommendations and comments, and after evaluating and drafting new language in response, the committee recommended withdrawing the rules as currently proposed and reproposing them, along with the revisions to the contract forms. So these rules and the forms adopted by reference will be presented for proposal in the next agenda item. So for now, the staff recommendation for this agenda item is to authorize staff on behalf of the Commission to withdraw the 22 TAC Chapter 537 amendments and new rule under this agenda item.
We entertain a motion.
Motion to accept staff's recommendation to withdraw the amendments and new rule 22 TAC Chapter 537.
Motion made by Commissioner Pena. Second, Commissioner Miller. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? Motion carries. Agenda item number 24.
Agenda item 24 is discussion and possible action to propose amendments to 22 TAC Chapter 537. So you just withdrew those amendments. This would be the agenda item to propose them or repropose them again. Again, the specific sections being amended are listed in the agenda and included in your materials. The proposed amendments and new rules to 537 are made as a result of quadrennial rule review. In part, the proposed changes to the existing rules add the title of the form adopted by reference in each of the rule titles and add clarifying language to specify which forms are for mandatory versus voluntary use by license holders. As before, the new rules pair previously existing forms that were available for voluntary use by license holders with a rule to provide greater clarity about the form's purpose and use. So those are the changes to the rules. Turning now to the forms, the Broker Lawyer Committee recommended revisions to the contract forms adopted by reference under the proposed amendments and new rules. A summary of those changes are included in your materials. However, I'm going to highlight a few of them here.
So paragraph 3 is amended to add a definition of cash portion of the sales price. A new required notices section is added to paragraph 6, which provides one location where MUDs, PIDs, and other similar notices that have been given or attached to the contract can be listed. As a result, the corresponding reference in paragraph 22 to the addendum, the PID addendum, is removed. Paragraph 7F is revised to require that the seller first provide the buyer with copies of documentation from the repair person that shows both the scope and payment for the work completed, as well as transferring any transferable warranties at seller's expense at closing. You heard earlier about the suggested revisions to paragraph 11, changing some of the terminology to informational items and making clear that license holders cannot engage or practice law. Paragraph 21 is amended to add a line for a courtesy copy to another individual, like an agent. In a handful of the contracts, including the unimproved property contract, the farm and ranch contract, and both of the new home contracts, incomplete and complete, the seller's disclosure paragraph has been amended to add check boxes to each disclosure item to indicate whether the seller is or is not aware, and then to add 2 additional disclosures. Vanessa mentioned the Farm and Ranch Working Group, so there's been some more substantial changes to the Farm and Ranch contract, and one in particular is to paragraph 3D, which alters the calculation of the sales price adjustment should the survey reveal a difference in acreage. Also, new paragraph 4D is added to address surface leases. In the HOA addendum, it's amended to accept prepaid regular periodic maintenance fees, assessments, or dues from the buyer's obligation to pay fees associated with the transfer of the property. Language is also added to clarify that these fees should be prorated pursuant to paragraph 13. And finally, the amended language adds that the paragraph does not apply to a fee that is imposed by the association, even if it's collected by the association for the benefit of a third party. The third-party financing addendum is amended to add an other financing box in paragraph 1. Both the addendum regarding residential leases and the addendum for disclosure of fixture leases are amended to add a checkbox in paragraph B1 related to notice of oral leases. And specific to the fixture lease addendum, it's been amended to modify paragraph A1 to include checkboxes in lieu of a blank line so that the parties can specifically indicate what types of fixture leases will be assumed and assigned. Last but not least, the addendum for reservation of oil, gas, and other minerals is amended to replace the phrase reserve and retain with waive in paragraph C. The staff recommendation is to authorize staff on behalf of the Commission to submit the proposed amendments and new rules to 22 TAC Chapter 537 and the forms adopted by reference as presented, along with any technical or non-substantive changes required for proposal to the Texas Register for publication and public comment.
I move that the Commission approve staff's recommendation.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
A motion made by Commissioner Miller, second by Commissioner Russell. Commissioner Lerner.
I just had a few questions. I mean, just for clarification reasons on these couple of things.
Okay.
I just gone through all of this, and I see where y'all added the line for the courtesy copy, which I know I have clients that husband, wife, or whoever both like to have their information so they can get it. Can that still go there, or is that just for an agent? Because you took off the other line.
So I think there's some flexibility there. Initially, the comment was, agents do want to have a copy, so there was a recommendation just to swap that out and have that be the CC line. But I think there's some flexibility there, and we can certainly pass that comment along to broker lawyer to say, listen, we liked having the two, places to add contact information. Should we consider adding that back and the CC line as well?
I mean, people do things differently these days, so
Yeah.
So then also on here, I saw where oak wilt was added. Is that something that's common? Oak wilt? I mean.
In areas, yes, probably not in El Paso, but
yeah, I mean, I never
you
hear
need
about
a tree to have that.
Yeah, and then I was just looking for where it's the do not sign. If there is a separate written agreement for payment of broker's fees, who is supposed to be signing? Because we don't really sign, we put our names on there. So what is that?
I think you're referring to the farm and ranch contract, that change. Yeah, so that is sometimes treated a little differently, and there is, in some cases, the ability for farm and ranch brokers to have that be their agreement between brokers.
Okay.
And so the thought is that, you know, there sometimes seems to be a confusion or mistakes made where people sign it, but they already have a separate agreement. So the comment there, I think, was to try to make that more conspicuous and clearer. But certainly we can take any suggestions back to the Broker Lawyer Committee as well.
Okay. And can you just explain, and I'm sorry I'm asking all these questions,
No,
a little
fine.
bit more about the mandatory membership form? Because I know a lot of people got confused the last time it was amended, and it's still a little confusing because of the way it's listed, I guess, on the TREC website. You don't know what's required, what's not required, what's transfer fee, or if the resale certificate is required. So I just is kind of trying to figure that out a little bit more.
Yeah, I think the goal of the Broker Lawyer Committee has been to try to address what they are seeing out in the field, where sometimes it's unclear, as an HOA may call a fee as something new, what is actually included in that paragraph, or as new fees kind of get introduced, you know, does that fall under that paragraph? So I think this language is an attempt to kind of really hone in on the intent of that, which is truly those things associated with the transfer of the property. You know, we'll see if you agree to propose it today, you know, what the comments are, and if people think that that will be effective. But that was kind of the goal, is to address those other types of fees that are sort of in the no man's land of, you know, where do they qualify or where do they fall.
I had a conversation with Community Archives not too long ago about how these management certificates are uploaded, and they're pages and pages long, and then it lists 10, 15 fees, and you really don't know which ones apply to put there and not. And to me, which I've told them, you have to kind of work to the lowest denominator so people can figure this out after you shuffle through and see if it applies to them. And that was the problem, is you cannot figure out what's required. Is, you know, is there that transfer fee or an improvement fee or whatever they may call it that is required that needs to go in there, because people get to closing and go, what is this?
Right, it is confusing.
So,
yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Of course.
Other comments? And these are being proposed, so they will be out for public comment until the November meeting.
Correct.
And we do have an online comment tool. So, you know, take it and look at it and comment. I will make a comment. I love the fixed release addendum. I love the way that was cleaned up. So hope we keep that. All right. Anything else? We need to vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstaining? Motion carries. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I believe we now go to agenda item number 29.
That is also me.
Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
So agenda item 29 is discussion and possible action to conclude the review of 22 TAC as follows. Chapter 537, professional agreements and standard contracts, and Chapter 543, rules relating to the provisions of the Texas Timeshare Act. So after review of these chapters as part of quadrennial rule review, staff has determined that the reasons justification for adopting the rules within these chapters continues to exist. Furthermore, the review process indicated that certain rules needed to be amended for clarity or to better reflect applicable law, policies, or procedures. These amendments were adopted or reproposed earlier in this meeting. No comments were received regarding the Commission's notice of review of these chapters. Therefore, the staff recommendation is to authorize staff on behalf of the Commission to close the review of 22 TAC chapters 537 and 543 as presented.
Would entertain a motion?
So move, Mr. Chairman, close it.
Motion by Commissioner Pena.
Second.
Second, Commissioner Woodruff. All in favor? Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any abstaining? Any opposed? Any abstaining? Motion carries.
Thank you.
All right, agenda item 30. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. It's discussion and possible action regarding FY23 draft budget, the financial administration policy, and the FY23 investment policy. Summary, you should have received a copy of the budget under separate cover. It looks like this.
Yes.
In addition to the investment policies and the budget and financial administration policies. Just want to make sure everyone has everything. The second draft of the FY 2023 budget proposal is presented as a 3-year budget, and it's important to note that the first year, labeled 2023, is the only year that we are requesting to be adopted today, while projected 24 and 2025 are to be considered as a forecast. And before I get started, I just wanted to echo Commissioner Williams in his statement made during his Budget Committee report, and just let you know that we are in a great position as an agency. And as of 9:45 this morning, we had $24.3 million in the bank, which is a great place for us to be. And as a reminder, we've been directed to spend down excess funding, and we've also have funding in reserve that can cover our operational expenses. So as I prepared the budget, I continually analyzed our financial position, and as such, I'm not worried about a shift in the market as it relates to our agency revenue at this time. Key highlights in the FY 2023 budget are: there's an increase in salary and wages to account for staff by 11 FTEs. A detailed narrative about each position can be found on page 9 of the budget document. However, the proposed staff will be allocated as follows: 1 training specialist for Customer Relations Division, 2 licensing and permit specialists for the licensing division to help with processing applications and renewals, given that our...
Excuse me.
Yes, sir.
Where will we find it?
Separate document on the folder. You looking at folder?
I don't see it.
Or did they just receive the hard copy?
It's in your drive.
It's in the
It's
drive.
in the drive?
On the surface. Yeah.
Can't find it on...
Oh. It's in here? Yeah. This table didn't get one.
Sorry about that, sir.
That's all right. It's all right. I've seen it. No, you have it? You have one?
It is a beautiful...
I've been through it. I'm fine.
It is a beautiful document.
All right. I was given the highlights, starting with the 11 FTEs that are in the budget that can be found on page 9 of the budget document that lists the narrative about those positions. I mentioned the 1 for training specialists for CRD, the 2 licensing and permit specialists for the licensing division to help with processing applications and renewals, given that our TREC license holder count has increased to 231,000 as reported by Director Sample. 1 program specialist for the education division to assist with education audit and compliance review. 1 document services technician to assist in our mailroom, and 6 positions to support the enforcement division and our goal to reach a timely complaint resolution. These include 2 attorneys, 2 investigators, and 2 legal assistants. The draft of the budget incorporates a 5% merit allowance, which we discussed at the May Commission meeting. In addition, there's a salary allowance to allow for an additional 5% of the budget equal to the FY23 salary requirements. These funds are earmarked for a one-time salary adjustment to be administered by the executive director as she deems appropriate to address recent inflation. Another highlight is that you will see that there's a $1.2 million increase in professional fees and services to reflect the projected expenditures for the Regulatory Applications Modernization Project, our RAMP project, or our licensing database replacement. Equipment rental costs decrease as we shift from purchasing leasing laptops to purchasing laptops, excuse me. This shift also means that there's an increase of $48,000 in the supplies and equipment category to support the purchase of that equipment. Lastly, the other operating expense category increased slightly by $10,000 to account for an increase in funding needed for the DPS interagency contract. The second draft of the budget was reviewed thoroughly by the Budget Committee, and all changes included in the draft before you today were discussed and approved by the committee. Now, moving on to the FY23 budget and financial administration policy. If we don't have any questions about that, just wanted to let you know that it is included for your review. There's been no change to our processes or these documents since they were last amended in August of 2021. And as a recap, the budget and financial administration policy details activities such as our budget preparation, financial reports, budget amendments, reserve accounts, and things of that nature. The investment policy details our authorized investments, investment strategy, public funds investment act training, safekeeping, and the required account balances and allowable expenses. Staff recommendation. Staff recommends that the Commission approve the second draft of the FY 2023 budget as presented. Are there any questions?
Is the approval process, this is a second reading of the budget, right? So we have one more to go and the finalization of the budget, or this is it?
This would be it, sir.
All right. Our work here is done. No.
I'd like for the commission to approve staff recommendation
Second.
to adopt the fiscal year 2023 budget.
Yes, sir.
I have a motion by Commissioner Williams, second by Commissioner Russell. Discussion.
Mr. Chairman, I think we're also approving the administration policy as well as the investment policy as presented.
All three in one motion?
Yes.
Would you?
Move to approve the budget and the investment policy.
And the administration policy.
And administration policy.
Second that, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, I've got a motion to approve all three. Commissioner Williams, second by Commissioner Pena and Russell. Discussion.
Excellent work. Yes. Good job.
Thank you, sir.
I'm really pleased with the way the budget turned out. And so we've got our inputs. Obviously, our license holder numbers are going up, and it's something to look out for from a budgeting standpoint, from a staffing standpoint. And I think staff has done a great job of identifying the needs with respect to the resources that are needed to meet the demand of increased licensure. So, excellent.
I agree. I don't think anybody saw, the increase of licensing over the last 4 or 5 years that we've seen. So we are solid financially. All right, any other discussion on the budget prior to adoption? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? Motion carries. Thank you. Your job is now done.
At least one of them.
We're just getting started.
Agenda item number 31.
Hey, good afternoon. Vanessa Burgess, General Counsel for the record. Agenda item 31 is discussion and possible action to delegate approval and signature authority for the Regulatory Applications Modernization Project, otherwise known as RAMP, contract. This is the database and backend system that the agency will utilize for all its core functions. Texas Government Code 2261.254 requires this delegation because of the anticipated value of the contract is over $1 million. As you are aware, the Commission has an open request for offers and is currently working through that process with the expectation of awarding a contract to begin the RAMP project. This delegation would authorize the Executive Director to have that final approval and signature authority. The staff recommendation is to delegate the final contract approval and signature authority of the Regulatory Applications Modernization Project to the Executive Director.
Would entertain a motion?
I move the Commission approve staff's recommendation.
Motion made by Commissioner Lerner, second by Commissioner Miller. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'm excited about this. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Agenda item number 32. I probably should let you do 32 after 30. My apologies.
No worries.
You're getting your steps in.
Yes, I appreciate it.
Okay.
Got a few more to go. Discussion and possible action regarding approval of the internal audit plan for FY 2023. Summary. Historically, the internal audit plan and internal audit report are presented to the Commission at the August meeting. However, due to unforeseen circumstances on the part of the agency's auditors, McConnell and Jones, those deliverables are not ready to be presented today. As such, staff recommendation is different than what is included in your materials. Recommendation, staff recommends that the Commission delegates approval to the Internal Audit Committee to approve the internal audit plan and the internal audit report. The approved internal audit plan will be presented at the next Commission meeting in November.
So is this a motion to table?
This is a motion to, I don't like the word table, to.
The recommendation is to delegate that approval to the audit committee, and then the approval of the plan itself, and then that plan will come back before the Commission in November just for review and presentation. That way we don't lose the quarter to that approval.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, but the actual approval of the audit plan is going to be pushed to the November meeting, right? And we're just asking the internal audit committee to look at it in the interim, right?
Right. So it'll be, you're delegating that approval to the audit committee, the actual approval,
Okay.
and then it will come back for presentation and review at the November meeting. And changes can always be made, right, to that plan to the extent they need to be.
Okay. I motion to that effect.
I'd have a motion. Second. Motion by Commissioner Pena, second by Commissioner Woodruff. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstaining? Motion carries. All right.
When is the next audit committee meeting?
To be determined. Soon, very soon.
To be determined soon.
Very soon.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Item agenda 33, approval of broker responsibility course. Examination Services Director Jennifer Wheeler.
Good afternoon, everyone. Jennifer Wheeler, Director of Education and Exams. Agenda item 33 is discussion and possible action to approve the text materials for the 2023-2024 Broker Responsibility course. These course materials were sent to you under separate cover. I'm going to echo Chelsea and say that I'm proud to say that I feel like every version of our legal update and broker responsibility courses just keep getting better and better. We've added some video segments to this course. Those are in the process of being recorded and will be added to the materials. More graphics, some really helpful instructional tools, I believe, and I really hope you all enjoyed reviewing it. I always appreciate the feedback that you provide. So before I make my recommendation, I'd like to acknowledge the subject matter experts who contributed to the writing group. First of all, we were particularly fortunate to have Chair Kestner attend our course writing group meetings and are grateful for all of the insight and direction you provided to the group. So a special thank you to you, Chair. Thank you. Other than agency staff, additional subject matter experts included that provided significant content and expertise to this endeavor included Charles Porter, Chance Brown, Byron Underwood, and on behalf of the Real Estate Center, Avis Wukash and Carrie Lewis. Dedicated staff who contributed to this effort include Jennifer Gruby, our curriculum developer, Mike Malloy, Director of Enforcement, Summer Mandel, Government and Strategic Communications Director, Abby Lee, Deputy General Counsel, Vanessa Burgess, General Counsel, and myself. We really had a productive group. Many thanks to everyone for the commitment of time and all of the hard work put into this important effort. As always, a corresponding PowerPoint will be developed and made available prior to the instructor trainings, which will be primarily start taking place in October. The Real Estate Center is planning trainings to take place live and in person in Fort Worth, Dallas, Houston, San Antonio, and Austin. We are also investigating adding an additional training in West Texas and perhaps a Zoom option for those who are unable to travel. As always, training information will be posted to the Real Estate Center website once the dates and locations are confirmed. After speaking with the Real Estate Center, I expect that to be pretty soon, in the next coming weeks. I would also like to acknowledge that the writing team is tracking sections of the materials that may need to be updated based on rule changes that were up for proposal today and anything that'll take place in November. And with that, my staff recommendation is that you approve these text materials with any technical or non-substantive changes. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
When does this get published and pushed out there?
Effective January 1st.
Okay.
But as soon as the trainings start, we'll make those materials available to the instructors.
Right, okay.
Yes.
I move that the commission approve the staff's recommendation.
I have a motion from Commissioner Miller. Do I have a second?
Second.
Commissioner Russell. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? Motion carries.
Okay, thank you.
I want to commend staff and the entire working group. They did a really good job putting this together. You know, we can't enforce best practices, but we can certainly discuss it in a meeting and in training, and I think they did a good job. Being in West Texas, the trainings are posted for Dallas, Fort Worth, Austin, San Antonio, and Houston. Nothing east of or west of Fort Worth. I'll make it public. I challenge, reach out to the associations, the Odessa, Midland, San Angelo, Abilene, El Paso, Lubbock, Amarillo, and have them have someone monitor. But anyway, I think the more people that can train the trainer, the more people we get out there, exposed to broker responsibility. And I know everybody's doing a really good job on that, but being from West Texas and being in a different time zone, I think sometimes we need that voice heard that, come to El Paso. We'll be glad to have you there to teach the class. But I think it's going to be a really good class. I really do. I think there's going to be more interaction. And so looking forward to it. But y'all look over the material, and you have any changes, please let us know. But anyway, thank you for your work. I mean, you cannot believe how hard staff worked getting stuff done. And again, for them to change the dialogue as we are writing it was just amazing. It really was. So a really good group put together. It was fun for me to watch. I actually did nothing but watch, and it was certainly fun. So all right, very good. Agenda item 34, discussion and possible action regarding topics for the November workshop. I believe we have required annual training. We do have that. Get ready. Get ready. All right. Additional comments, concerns, Commissioner Hargraves, anything on that? We've talked about different workshops, different time frames.
Yeah, I know there was some discussion about whether to continue with the two-day workshop or meeting then workshop, or just do it just a meeting, maybe do the 2-day a couple of times a year. Just kind of want to get everybody's thoughts on that.
Okay. Thoughts on that? We can certainly, vet it tomorrow too, but any thoughts?
Yeah, I'd be open to that. The other thing I've wondered about is doing a afternoon meeting here and then a morning workshop if we needed it. That would eliminate, one night, that sort of thing.
I know we've talked about having the commission meeting and then the workshop afterwards, and just personally, I'm brain dead after I don't know how much good it would do. Maybe a afternoon before. I know the workshops are tedious, and they've never been done until what, 2 years ago, 3 years ago. But I've never left one that I haven't left with more information that I thought helped me do my job. So we need to get a happy medium in between. We are volunteers. Taking full advantage of the volunteers' time without taking advantage of their time, and so. Maybe we look at the afternoon before the meeting, and then the meeting. The only thing is if we do it on Monday, like you said, then that staff is on Sunday. I like traveling on Sunday because it's kind of an off day. But I see the value in the workshops, but I certainly understand everybody's time constraints. So, you know, let's have ideas, okay? I mean, we have them scheduled for October, November already, but we don't for 23, correct?
The only, looks like we've got the February one, just because that typically lines up with the winter meeting so that folks can attend. But we can put something on the workshop agenda to workshop the schedule, the calendars for 23 in total, and that way everybody's got their dates and the order. So we can just add that as an agenda item and everyone bring forward their ideas, because it sounds like there's lots of different ideas. Workshop first, half day, all of that. And so that's something that we could workshop in the workshop.
In anticipation of that, we will send out a survey to get feedback from each of you so that then you can talk about that and review it in November.
Okay.
Scott?
Very good. Any ideas for topics?
Essentially, we're doing a day and a half now because we're usually done by noon and
Tuesday.
can scurry on. I'd like to have the meeting and be able to talk about everything in the meeting, but then the next day, if something popped up, we have an opportunity to discuss it. But we are at a day and a half now.
Yeah, and I mean,
is it limited to a workshop with the entire commission as a collective, or can it be like a committee meeting?
Theoretically, it could be a committee meeting. The thing about a workshop is it's a quorum, and so it's an open meeting.
Right.
And, I'm just, and again, we can talk about this tomorrow, but the workshop before the commission meeting, we'd have to be real careful not to dig into any commission meeting material. You follow me?
Business, yeah.
So
Yeah, I think it'd have to be after. I mean,
yeah. But anyway, we will meet tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. and we can hash this out, correct?
In November we can hash it out.
Okay, November we can hash it out. Okay. All right. Anything further on that? Well, the chair would entertain a future agenda items. Anything on the future agenda items? Future meetings, we have those scheduled. We talked about February. Agenda item 37.
The November dates, there's something going on apparently that week in November, because there's limited
Hotel?
limited hotel. So I don't know if we need to maybe take that into consideration or not.
Fall is hard because of Austin city limits and the car races and everything else happening, and then also Thanksgiving. But what we may be able to do is, if there's no hotels at the GSA rate, we'll see about paying more. We'll go through the layers. Does that sound okay?
That's fine.
Okay.
Okay, agenda item 37. The chair would entertain a motion to adjourn. I have a motion by Commissioner Miller. Do I have a second? Commissioner Woodruff, all in favor? All opposed? Motion carries. Thank y'all. Adjourned at 2:01 p.m.